Hello, my name is Walian, and this is the Walian channel. Um, this is going to be a hopefully brief video on just a little study technique I like to use when looking into the astrological interpretation of the planets and the signs, the zodiac, if you will. This is a re-recording, you could say. I originally streamed this, but I had some issues with my playback video. Um, the lag was just really bad. I was having quite a few latency issues, but I hoped at the time that I would have been able to save the video, or I guess save the stream as a video and just straight upload that to my YouTube, and it just didn't quite turn out that way. So I decided that I would make an attempt to just record a video of me going over these slides, and hopefully that works out just as well as my initial stream. um this is likely a precursor for more future endeavors involving this channel. um yeah, let's get into it. Because I will say, because I initially kind of did this as a stream, and because this isn't necessarily like a uh this isn't necessarily a educational video about astrology. This is a video more about kind of tips and tricks to learn more about astrology. Though we will, inevitably kind of get into, the meaning of the planets and the signs. But this is very much a video just about the process of learning itself. Um, kind of getting into who I am and why I'm doing this and made this video. As I said, I'm Walian. That's what you may call me, and what most people at this point now online kind of know me as. I just really like learning and studying new things, and one of the things I've recently been interested in is astrology. But I kind of notice in the process of trying to learn astrology is it is a hundreds of thousands year old field of study. And when you have a field of study that is so old, I mean, you have to remember, because of astrology, we also have astronomy. There's a reason why astronomy and it is called what it is, because they were what was already astrology. When they started adding kind of that suffix to field of study, astrology was already a thing. They were already like, if you're studying the sky, you're studying the stars and the planets, that's astrology. So they kind of had to find a new way to be like, well, we're specifically looking at the quantifiable science of space and just studying space itself. Not so much with the added kind of cultural interpretations of studying the stars, right? Um, so yeah, astrology is super old. Um, kind of also predates modern philosophy, which we won't quite get into that today, but that is probably something that will come up in later streams and videos and posts. Um, and what do I mean by streams and videos and posts? Like I said, I just love learning, and I'm one of those people where, honestly, education is my hobby. Um, I part of why I didn't really go the like proper academic route, that's not really my scene, is because I do this for fun. I like to learn things for fun. Like, that is how I like to pass the time. That's what sparks joy in me, you could say. And because this is, casual, um, when, like most people, I like to share my fun. I like to share what I've learned and what I am currently learning. So this isn't to say I am like a, well, one, I should say, just get it out the way now. I am not an astrologer. I am learning about astrology. I'm not an astrologer, and currently I have no plans to start practicing astrology, or I should say have a practice of astrology. Um, I'll read charts for myself. I'll read charts for, friends and family, people I personally know. And even occasionally just, if, I'm like in conversation with someone and they're like, hey, read my chart. I might do that, in that way that artists might draw their friends for free, or like draw a stranger for free. But like, it's no guarantee just asking an artist to draw you is gonna get you anything more than, um, a very unpleasant look. That's kind of my relationship to practicing astrology. That's not my scene personally. And to be even more honest, slightly irrelevant, but not really. Part of why I even got into astrology is because, I've already kind of been, I wouldn't say involved, but, this is already part of my field of what I do. Like what I actually kind of do for work and how I like live my life. Um, I am religious. I am a spiritual person. Very into philosophy, theology, history, culture. Like, that's just always been my life in general. Sometimes you see something new, and it kind of like, yeah, it brings something new to your life. Like, if you maybe like lived in the city all your life, and you know never really got out much, never really was that outdoorsy, uh you know don't even, or never even went really like high up in a building before, usually travel underground through the subway, and you see someone rock climbing and you're like, that's what I want to do. And you start going to rock climbing gyms, and then you start going out of the city to hike, and then next thing you know, you're mountain climbing, and then you're on Mount Everest. um Sometimes that happens in life, and that's how you get into new things. um Honestly, I'm not really one of those people, actually. Now that I said that, I'm really not one of those people. I've got into astrology because um that's just kind of where my interests lie. I'm very curious about people. People kind of are my special interest. And astrology covers so much. Like I just said, it is thousands of years old. People have kind of been practicing astrology in some form kind of since they've been able to see the sky. Um, you know, People in ancient times noticed these patterns, and astrology kind of spawned from that. So, as someone who is interested in uh history, culture, the ways we try and understand the world, it was really a no-brainer to get into astrology. You know, I do call myself a storyteller. Technically I'm a writer, I'm an artist. Now I kind honestly I do a little bit of everything. I'm just like to be creative and make things. Which is kind of why you'll see me like, this is going to be a video about astrology and studying astrology, but there's no promise or guarantee that future videos are going to be very similar to this. And even on my social media, you'll see where else you'll find me on the internet is kind of various places. Various places doing various things. That's just kind of my thing. Um but I like that astrology does kind of fit into all things that I'm about and interested in. I often like to say that, reading a chart is kind of like uh trying to figure out a story. And that could also just be the way I look at storytelling and what stories are. Um I am definitely one of those writers that's like the story comes to you and you just have to relay the information to everyone else. That is very much my creative process. I'm definitely one of those people who's like, I had a dream and then I had to make something out of it. Or like, I don't know, I just got this feeling and I had to, make something based off of this feeling. That is very much me. And there's definitely room for that in astrology. I mean, just the very way it came about. People were like, I don't know when the moon is, at a certain phase, in a certain sign, things just start happening. And over, after watching the cycles happen enough times, people are like, they keep happening in the way that they happened the last time this happened, so there's something there. Is in Astrology isn't a hard science. It's not necessarily a science at all, but it is a legitimate field of study. Um, that's kind of where people get mixed up a little bit. They think, they focus in on the fact that astrology is often tied to religious and spiritual practices. Um, Again, keyword religious and spiritual practices, because those things aren't even necessarily the same, are they? You know, there's a lot within that too. So yeah, astrology is often tied to those things, and you could also say done for those reasons, or like practice for those reasons. But there are like atheist astrologers. There are people who, like me, aren't practitioners. They just know about it, or have learned about it. Excuse me. And even within astrology, there are different uh like schools of thought and like schools of astrology. The one people think about and talk about the most is related to horoscopes and like people's birth charts. Um, the chart itself is a horoscope. Um, like when you kind of create that little circle with the houses and where the planets are within that, imaginary circle in the sky, that's the horoscope. Um, like people think about that the most, but that's not all there is to astrology. There's mundane astrology, there's different kind of, like I said, like schools of astrology. You have like evolutionary astrology, Hellenistic astrology. So there's a lot. There's a lot under the astrological umbrella. And obviously if you are a lay person, you're not going to know that. Like, if you're not in the medical field, you don't necessarily know all the jobs within the medical field. You don't necessarily know the ins and outs of every, study in the medical field. Like, yes, there's biology, but there's like other branches of biology. It's the same with astrology, because again, it's just a field of study. It's just following the patterns in the sky and seeing how they match up to things on Earth. It's kind of a study that combines like philosophy, the environment, psychology, yes, in a way, spirituality. It does a lot. I mean, think about how, times were back in the day. Like, one thing that also is interesting to me, I feel like astrology really shows that ancient people weren't quite the unintelligent people that they're often portrayed to be. All throughout and it's so funny because I recently read this book about the history of the Zodiac, and even in ancient times, people were arguing about folks being too superstitious, and even in ancient times, people were arguing about the purpose of astrology and shouldn't be, should people continue to practice and allow it, because people just use it as an excuse to basically not kind of own up to their own lives. And that is kind of always been an argument for honestly everything. All throughout history, people, kind of using the available information at the time to justify their own behavior, good or bad. So you can't really blame astrology for that. But yeah. Because astrology is so vast and there's so much information out there, again, it's been around for a very long time, and there are many different people from different places of different backgrounds and cultures that have kind of participated in this field, and have their own understanding of things and their own ways of presenting information and their own ways of teaching. It's a lot to try and get into and understand, and it's very easy to get lost in the sauce. So that's why I was like, let me try and simplify this for myself. Let me try and put things in a way that I can understand, and you know let me try and figure things out, basically. And I took all these notes. I will admit, though, I admittedly I was never one of those students that was uh kind of inherently good at taking notes. I really had to learn how to do that properly. And also, a lot of the ways people suggest you take notes just did not and does not work for me. I very much kind of always have to make my own system of note taking for whatever I'm learning. And it could be dependent on the teacher, dependent on like what textbooks I'm reading. It depends on various things, subject matter. It depends, but kind of consistently I've had to figure out my own way to make sense of things, which makes sense. Everyone's different. When it comes to learning things, it is very or I should say, it entirely hinges on kind of how your brain works. How does your mind work? What do you need to know so you can understand something? How do you need things phrased? How do you need to be given information? So, with that in mind, kind of thinking of what works for me, I kind of had to take a bit of a step back from all the information out there. I kind of found the various resources on the planets and the signs. I took my notes. I made like a giant just kind of giant document, and very straightforward. It's just you know sign name, planet name, bullet points, everything that has to do with them that I've learned so far. But then I condensed that into, okay, what are kind of the key things I have to know that, again, like if I was trying to read a chart, which is kind of also going to be the framing of everything we talk about today, because mundane astrology is a bit much, and other branches of astrology like horror, I think that's how it's pronounced, it's a bit much. It's above and beyond me. I'm just focusing right now on how to read a chart and kind of the mechanics of that, because astrology is complicated. It's complicated. Low-key, anything that heavily has to do with math, it's gonna be complicated. So yeah, just if I was reading a chart and I was having trouble making sense of things, what do I need to know at a glance that are kind of like really get those gears going? What'll just help make everything make sense? What'll help make those kind of key signifiers stand out when trying to look at a chart and understand things. And even just, because I feel like, especially when trying to learn astrology, um, there is a bit of a problem where, uh, because I think it is a very low key academic centered field, and people present things very academically. It is, like, if you've ever, you know gone to university, or, you know taken like college university classes, or even sometimes just try to have a conversation with someone who's like, really heavy in academia, or just, and not even just that, but just if you're trying to sometimes take classes from people who have been in the field and been in the field for a while. They've done what they've done for like half their life or a very long time, or and are just very experienced. Sometimes people forget what you actually need to know and what actually is basic information. And I ran into that problem a lot. I should say ran into that problem a lot, but just, there's certain things I had to do to even make sense of what people were saying. Sometimes you have these things kind of passed off as, or presented as, like entry level information, like entry level books, entry level stuff, and it's not entry level at all. And another thing I've also noticed is, like in all areas of academia, there's also, a little bit of an elitism. It's very interesting. I feel like I've mentioned this a bit, just in general, kind of everywhere when I'm talking about trying to even learn astrology. A lot of astrologers I've seen argue about the importance of Mercury versus Jupiter, and like which planet rules astrologers and which planet has more to do with astrology and learning astrology than the other. And honestly, to me, based off of what I currently understand of those two planets, and also kind of how I, kind of view how astrological themes apply to actual life and living. I feel like it's not so much an argument actually about the importance of the planets. It's really a argue about what culture do you value in the astrological realm. Um, if that doesn't make sense, what I'm saying is, Jupiter and Mercury are both teachers and students, or, they could both represent kind of learning. Just different sides of it. And, we're kind of get more into the kind of theme of astrology, and, or, this theme within astrology of contradictions and kind of counterbalances, and, a word that came up the first time I tried to record this, or I guess a phrase that came up, kind of the first time I tried to record this, was within and without. Because astrology attempts to, kind of speak on and encompass all things, because again, it's kind of people relating symbols in the sky to life on Earth. And what is life? Complicated. So, you can't simplify kind of the experience of living life. Not in a satisfactory way for everyone. You could do that for yourself. You can try and say for yourself what is, kind of life, what is the purpose of living, what does it mean to live and to be in existence. You can only say that for yourself, because what matters to you matters to you. It's not going to matter to everyone else, and what your experience is your experience. So to me, it seems more like an argument of, kind of something I've observed of, well, what do you value? What do you think is good teaching? What do you think makes a good teacher, makes a good student? What do you think makes a bad teacher and a bad student? What do you think makes quality education? What do you think makes, not so great education? I see a lot of those arguments. And I know I just said you can't really like simplify things of life, but that is kind of what it boils down to. Is it's actually people arguing about their points of view and how right they think their point of view is, which is just so ironic to me, because the whole point of astrology is you can only understand things from your point of view. That's kind of the whole premise. You stand in your spot on Earth and you look up at the sky. The sky looks different depending on where you are at what time of day. And what time of year, what time of the season. Spring in the northern hemisphere is winter in the southern. People even argue about, how right it is to say that the zodiac starts with Aries. Because for some cultures, no, the zodiac doesn't start with Aries. So that's just an interesting thing. And, kind of, getting into the reason why I did this, and why I thought I might share. Because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of opinions out there. And, this was made to be kind of a compliment to a blog post I made, and there'll be links to everything that I kind of mentioned in the description of this. Also, my link tree is where you can find all my social media. I'm not really a fan of like linking everything individually, so like go to my link tree if you want to, see my other social media, where else I am, kind of get into the things shared here. But yeah, why I kind of made my post, why I did my stream, and why I'm making this video, and I made these slides, and I even shared these slides too. These slides will be available. I thought one is just nice to have. I guess this is a bit like a little lecture. It's nice to have the complimentary material that goes with the lecture, or it could work as a bit of homework too. I have some kind of it's study material, right? This is all about the study of the study. This isn't necessarily about the thing, but it does get into that a bit. But yeah, like I was saying, I was having difficulty wading through the information and making sense of things, because just a lot of the things just weren't quite, for me, it wasn't quite as helpful as it could be. And also there's a problem of access and having access to things, especially if you don't got a budget like that. Things can definitely get better around that, but also I get it. People need to eat, people need to live, but also I will say it is interesting that in a field of study that is kind of about environment, it seems like sometimes people don't take that into consideration. And I'm gonna just say that. I'm gonna just say that. You know, you can't study astrology without studying the world. Um, but yeah, I made my long notes. I made my short notes, but I still was having trouble. Like, for whatever reason, it was still hard to get things in my head and just like keep it there. Um, and I have mentioned before, it could honestly, part of the problem is probably just the chart I have. My personal birth chart, um, it's not necessarily the best at trying to read. I think unless you are a bit uh better at knowing and understanding astrology. People, they always kind of say when trying to learn astrology, read your chart, read other people's charts. Look at celebrity charts. Um, Compare kind of the history of a person to their charts, and the transits over time. And I'm like, great, you know, let me try that. And honestly, just the way my chart is set up, it throws me off. It throws me off. So I'm like, especially since, you see how people do describe things and talk about things. And for me, a lot of times what people say, and this is like, I'll be honest, like, there are certain astrologers I really enjoy learning from because they seem to really grasp the expansive nature of astrology and how there are no absolutes. And this might sound, again, kind of contradictory, but like, there is and then there isn't. There are things that just are, and then there are things that it can't be. But low key, there's a lot of space within that. Um, like, quick example, because again, we're gonna kind of get into this as we get further into this video, but it's a quick example: Mars and Venus. Mars is separation, Venus is unions. So Mars isn't necessarily going to be a unifying presence in a horoscope, and Venus isn't necessarily going to be a separating presence in a horoscope. However, once you start adding other things in, I will say it can be understandable when people start interpreting things in a certain way that might sound like one or the other. And that's why it's very important to kind of have a fuller picture of the possibilities within astrology. And so I really appreciate the astrologers that do kind of show the potential within astrology, because that is kind of what astrology is. It's showing potential. And obviously, people that have been practicing for a while, they really have gotten good at reading the symbols and really figuring out, like, being better able to pinpoint potential. But again, at the end of the day, it's all potential. Because again, it's not that the planets are making you do things. It's showing the patterns on Earth. So if you have a pattern of behavior, or if there are certain patterns in nature, again, you have that potential for something to absolutely happen, but there aren't absolutes in astrology. Because you could decide one day, um, I'm not gonna eat pizza every Wednesday, even though I usually eat pizza every Wednesday. And even though, you know, uh, there might be something in the transits that day that might show, oh, I don't know, uh, I don't know, maybe there's strong potential you'd get into an accident. But because you decide, oh, I'm not going to have the pizza this day, the accident doesn't happen. I mean, you might see the accident. You might have like a near miss because you're turning one way instead of the other. Um, or maybe just something else happens. But like someone could have read it as, oh, because you're always on the road at this time, you're gonna have accident. That might not be a good example, but like, yeah, there's, life happens regardless of what's going on in the sky. Um, and people are very quick to speak in absolutes when that's just not true. Again, especially if you're not that good. I'll be honest, not everyone's that good. So, there's a lot of people that are very good at sharing basic information, but it's not actually that helpful because it is so basic. And that's what I was having issue with trying to read my own chart because, there's certain things people say. And for me personally, it doesn't add up. And there's also and I do mention this in my post, there's the cultural and historical reasons for why certain things people say does not add up. Like, I am a black woman, I'm disabled, I'm queer. People don't really, they're not thinking of me when they write these posts, when they have these books, when they have these podcasts, when they, are on social media sharing their information. Not everyone is having these things in mind when they are talking about the significations of the planets and the signs and what they could represent. Because, again, astrology is big and vast. There's a reason why cultures have different interpretations of the planets and signs, because their relationship to the world is different. Like, and I'll try and wrap this up. I didn't mean to have quite a long, intro before really getting into things, but I've just kind of accepted this is going to be a bit of a long video. So, I will try to mark, create chapters. I think that's what YouTube lets you do. I mean, hopefully it lets me do that. I don't know if you need a certain amount of subscribers, to do that, but yeah, hopefully, I'll be able to mark everything so, people can listen through and get to the points that, they want to. But yeah, like one thing I've noticed, I've seen a lot of folks of certain backgrounds, and actually I'll say backgrounds, not just necessarily like ethnicities or races or even nationalities, but I've seen kind of it get even further down into like what people's backgrounds are, like, what their classes, where they live, kind of their experience with things, which again makes sense. That is how astrology works. It's all based off of your relationship to your experience. Again, you can't understand things outside of your purview. So like I've noticed a trend of people really coming down hard on people on how they talk about Saturn. But again, like I just said, I am a black, disabled, queer woman, and not even like femme presenting woman. And my relationship with even all those things is varied. There's even more things within that, right? Um, I'm Black American. Actually, yes, I'll add that. That is important as well. That is one detail I will get into because it's relevant. I'm specifically Black American too. I live in this country because hundreds of years ago, and not that many hundred, I said that like it's a long time, but like a few hundred years ago, um, my folks were stolen from the African continent and shipped over to America. That's why I'm here. And understandably, I might have a different relationship to Saturn and Mars, I'll also add, than other people who don't have that history and who weren't raised in the culture I was. And this is something I really want to get into more and study more. There is just a different understanding of astrology I've noticed among Black people, specifically Black Americans. Not even getting into the fact that in Africa, in West Africa, they had their own astrology, their own astrological practices, their own understanding of astrology. Even despite living on the same continent that Hellenistic astrology and, kind of what people call Western astrology, which I personally think of as like Mediterranean astrology, but that's neither here nor there. But like what they call Western astrology, how the thing that became that, right, in our modern times, even though they existed on the same continent that helped spawn what we now call Western astrology, they were still doing their own thing. And yeah, there are certain similarities all throughout astrological practices, but there are also differences. And it's important to keep that in mind as well. Yes, there are the things people say, but again, there's also your relationship to kind of these patterns that have been or I guess that are talked about. And to some degree, there's just the fact that everyone has their own birth chart. And personally, I think because of this, everyone is going to understand astrological concepts differently because of their kind of innate ability to even understand certain things. Like, I am a very Jupiter heavy person. There's a lot of Jupiter in my chart. I literally only have Jupiter and Saturn placements in my chart. When we're talking about the planets, all my planets are in Jupiter and Saturn ruled signs. And even then, it's only 3 of them. It's only 3. I got 2 Jupiter signs and 1 Saturn ruled sign. That's where all my planets are. I have points and angles, obviously. I mean, everyone has angles in all the signs. That is literally how the house system works. That's how you get your houses. But yeah, I have angles and like the imaginary points in different signs. Even then, unless I start getting into asteroids, there's just not much variety in my chart. So I feel like, excuse me, astrologically, you could say that does represent, they're just certain planetary and zodiac themes I just don't get. It's very difficult for me. Like Mercury, I don't get Mercury like that. Gemini, Virgo, I got them in my life. I got people with those placements and their charts in my life, but like that's not me. That's not my experience. Those are my struggles. I can't relate to that. I'll be watching them like, oh, you can do that. That is something that can be done. That is a way to think and live life. Wow. But again, I can't relate. That's not me. That's not my experience. I don't understand it. Um, I mean, in fairness, I did recently, very recently, again, the first time I attempted to record this, I figured it out. And I'm kind of sad. I wish I I mean, I might try and figure out a way I could add a clip of that in when we do get to talk about Mercury. But again, the reason why I had to refilm because it keeps being long. So who knows what'll happen around that. But like, yeah. Also kind of proof the system works. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, like, I can't relate to that. So I do think I'm probably not the only person who has struggled to understand certain astrological concepts because I just can't relate. But again, like, kind of inherently, because of who and what I am, my relationship to Saturn, I mean, I literally have two parents that are, have Saturn sign placements, or Saturn ruled signs in their personal placements as well. Saturn is heavy in my family, so I could be biased too. I could be biased, but again, astrology is about the pattern, and I've noticed I'm not the only one. There's a legion of black girls out there that is like, we love Saturn. Saturn is not the terrible thing you make it out to be. Saturn is a way of life. Is Saturn a planet of life? No. But what is a part of life? Those Saturn themes. You can't avoid it. Stop fighting Saturn. Just stop. It doesn't have to be this bad. It doesn't. And that is true. Cause what I've noticed is that yeah, it seems to be people really just upset at kind of the implication that Saturn could possibly be not terrible. And that's where I'm like, is the point, like you are a practicing astrologer, don't you know that the point of kind of practicing astrology to help other people, or like for other people, you have that life element, again, that element of lived experience. And so that also means at the end of the day, it all boils down to people and how people are and choose to interpret things. And like in this modern age, Saturn doesn't have to be so bad. We have modern medicine. They didn't have Prozac in ancient times. Now hey, they had their ways. Again, I'm not one of those people that's like, ancient people were so dumb and stupid and overly superstitious. No. They have their ways of dealing. Which again, kind of shows them when people are like, people have ways back in the day of like dealing with hardships. The ways, what do they call it? Kind of like play. I can never say this word. Placating the planets that aren't doing so great in your chart and preparing for transits, which again is kind of also the point of astrology. Like, why bother looking into the future if you're not preparing to prepare for the future? Huh? Okay. Like, everything's just gonna suck just cause, and there's nothing you can do about it. Your life's just gonna be miserable. Aight. But toxic positivity, no, that's the, these girls are just being too toxic positive. by letting people know it's not the end of the world. You will survive past this. But I'm getting a bit of away and ahead of myself. Um, but yeah, people getting upset, acting like, folks are giving people a false ideal of things by being like, is astrology or not astrology? Is Saturn great? No, but it doesn't have to be that bad. And again, like I said, seeing the demographic of people saying this, and the demographic of people kind of countering this, and the language being used. That's an important thing too. The language being used. That was another thing that made me like, let's rethink some of these things and the way people are being taught things, and honestly the way people are being spoken to. Yeah, a lot of people are just very you can, I mean, hey, like I said, everyone's different. Everyone needs to learn things in different ways to understand things. I'm not one of those people where you can yell at me and like talk down to me and I'm going to listen to you. I'm just going to find someone else to get the exact same information of, because you're not special. You're not that. Again, this is all available online for free. And honestly, there are many ways you can get educated for cheap and or free. There are ways. But yeah, like it makes sense why people, of a similar demographic to me might, like me, have a different relationship to the traditionally more malefic planets. When your life is malefic, you do learn how to deal with that. A lot of Black people have learned over the course of these few hundred years how to deal with the themes of Saturn and Mars. So no, Saturn and Mars don't scare me. Like all things in astrology, it's just a part of life. It's just a part of life. I don't see why not fear mongering is sometimes called being toxically positive. Especially also, you don't know these people. You don't, like, so much of the things happen, or so much of existing happens in the mind and never actually leaves it. It's sometimes just best to just leave people be. So yeah. All that to say, seeing kind of how information is distributed and how people are suggested to learn things and interact with things, I was like, it's just not the vibe. It's not working. I need a new way. I need a new system. So that's when I was like, let me try and figure it out. Let me make sense of things. And hopefully sharing this, it can help other people make sense of things. So getting into it, the planets, the signs, and you, understanding the planets and signs by their essential dignitaries. Because, like we said, there are certain things that just kind of are. And again, like, how you learn about and understand astrology is going to be from your perspective. Like, like I already said, I'm American. So, most of the way I've grown up understanding about astrology and even in learning about astrology, a lot of it has been from a more Western astrological point of view. So that is what this is going to be about today. But also, if there are kind of equivocal themes in other understandings of astrology, this system still works. Basically, what we're going to be doing is, just looking at, very basic, just looking at what these signs and planets represent and using that, really trying to understand that to then know how to kind of read a chart and understand other larger astrological themes and patterns. Really trying to understand a transit and what it means to have certain transits. Really, trying to understand what potentially having certain placements and aspects in a chart could mean. Because again, it's a lot of information, and like the issue I was having was just honestly trying to simplify things kind of past the possibilities, and also make sense of the potential possibilities. Because like I said, there's certain ways people talk about the signs and talk about the planets, what they mean, but they don't really exactly help you, or tell you kind of like, I mean, in a way, just like what they mean. People give a lot of buzzwords and keywords, but they low-key just don't really mean anything. Like, it's one thing to say like the sun is ego or like energy, but okay, so what does that mean for when like the sun is in Cancer or Libra? How are you supposed to make sense of that? That Cancer has to do with, maybe the home. It's water and feminine. It's cardinal. Libra is air, masculine, cardinal. You might even know that, well, Aries is opposite Libra. The sun does well in Aries, but so it must not do great in Libra. But who, maybe you're like, but I don't see why, Libra does do poorly in the sun. Like, why is this what people say? And I'll say even kind of added that they're just, because astrology is so old, there are certain things that, certain reasons why things are and were that we don't even talk about today. But even without kind of doing like a deep historical dive into things, you could still kind of start to understand things by kind of learning where things are placed and how things kind of work. Like we can start to figure things out by kind of getting into some of this basic information that is available. Like we can start, really kind of thinking through the process and start to put the pieces together. So, what is essential dignitary? You could think of the planets as representing themes and energy. And the signs kind of represent how this energy and themes are expressed. You could think of the planets as like themes, and the sign is like what is done with these things, or like how these things are used or managed. The signs are kind of the management of the planets. And I didn't really bring up or get into the houses in this slide, or not, well, obviously not in this slide, but in this presentation that I made. the PowerPoint. But if you know a bit about houses, then you also know the houses are kind of where in your life, where in kind of your world, the environment, what where these things are happening, where this energy is is and how it's being expressed. But yeah. Um Now I'll sit here for a little bit so y'all can finish reading, or for y'all to read. Not exactly the best judge at figuring out how long people read. I'm a fast reader, so I'll wait a little bit. I'll give it like a minute or a few more seconds until we get to this next minute. Okay, next slide. And also, like I said earlier, there's a PDF of these slides. Like I said, this is a PowerPoint. I'm just kind of using it for the screen because, I mean that is how presentations work. Um, this is an essential dignitary chart. Now, just kind of where the sun, or not the sun, where the planets kind of do their best and worst at. Um, I will say, cause when I streamed this, a lot of the people in stream were like entirely unfamiliar with astrology, and even with my post, some of the people that read it, no idea about astrology. It's kind of, above and beyond them. But, obviously, because I kind of made these things, from kind of like my point of view of like where I'm at with astrology. This was all kind of made with the ideal that people are kind of already aware of these things. Again, this is just more kind of like, again, it's a study technique. It's supplementary to your learning, my learning. Kind of not meant just for people that are like starting out like me, but also, if sometimes you do just kind of forget things, or like I was saying earlier, you get too lost in the sauce and you focus too much on like certain things. Again, that kind of argument of, are astrologers more ruled by Gemini or Jupiter? We need both when studying things. Yes, it's good to be in the details, but you also need to know how to piece those details together to create the bigger picture. So that's kind of what this is about, is creating that bigger picture, or being able to take these details and create the bigger picture. Because that's what I was struggling with, because the people they were focusing on those details. I'm like, that's great, I have the details, I need to be able to look at the bigger picture, and is a bit difficult. Yeah, it was just not very helpful for me, not very helpful. So yeah, we're gonna move on. I'm assuming some of y'all watching this already know this. If not, like I said, there's a PDF of this. Also Googleable. This is all information that can be very easily Googled. Also, I only focused on the original 7. I still really need to learn to and figure out those other three later planetary editions. Also finding the information on that even more difficult than finding information on some other things. So we're not getting into that today. Maybe later, not today. So yeah, here's the signs, their modalities, the elemental modalities, the modalities. I kind of call them all modalities. That's not quite the right term, but I mean, they are modalities, so. But yeah, the elements of the signs, the modalities of the signs, the polarity of the signs. I did just keep feminine, masculine, because I'm just keeping it simple. That's generally what they're called. I personally like to consider them, or I also like to refer to them like introverted, extroverted. I had to step away from my computer for a bit, so don't remember where I was, but I think we were just talking about yeah, I like to consider the kind of polarity of the signs. I like to refer to them as extroverted and introverted. I mean, honestly, there's so many words, so many different words you could use. So I'm not really gonna stress it. And I'll be honest, I'm not necessarily one of those people that does feel a kind of way about the signs being gendered, cause personally, I feel like it's part of the story, right? And I think it does say a lot about people's how they interpret things, and I also think that is important. You don't necessarily want to lose the understanding or like the connection to that certain part to the understanding of why signs are the way they are. And, kind of also getting back to that earlier thing of, that we were talking about, like Saturn and Mars, and then also, talking about the benefics, and just kind of the planets overall. They're partially the signs are gendered because also signs have to do with gender and have to do kind of with gender roles. That is one thing I personally have been, kind of thinking about recently. How do we kind of talk about gender and astrology, because it does show in astrology the planets and signs do relate to gender. So I'm not, when it comes to the polarity thing, I'm not gonna stress it, because it also, how you talk about things is the most important. A misogynist is gonna find ways to be misogynistic regardless of whether or not you talk about whatever ways you change the language. People are gonna find ways to use language in a not so nice way. So let's go to the next slide. What does this mean? What are we doing here? When you know the themes of the planets and kind of the themes of the signs, it becomes much easier then to later understand what it means when we don't have this easy like one for one. Like again, because it can be overwhelming to take what you do know for certain and kind of apply it to these more nebulous things, like we know what the planets mean, we know what the signs mean. So what does it mean when you have planets and signs together that, have a bit uh possibly hard to immediately figure out meaning together. Um I perhaps not ironically, but in a way, I feel like part of the issue is I feel like that sometimes just means you just really need to deepen your understanding of what these things mean. Like, that's actually the issue here. Because again, it's great to have keywords, but they should be more of like a jumping point, right? I mean, there is this kind of concept in like writing and marketing, if you will. Like, when you're trying to, like, if you write a story, then you want to share that story, there's the tagline. And it's basically the entire story condensed in one sentence, that, or like one phrase, that is supposed to really help people figure out what this is all about. That's more how keywords should work when it comes to astrology. What's the one word that, and I mentioned in my first recording, so I'm gonna kind of use this phrasing again, or I guess use this metaphor again. Think of a, mind maps, or like brain maps, whatever they're called. You have the, like, the main circle, and then kind of the branching lines that offshoot to other points, and then those offshoot to other points. That's kind of what a keyword should be. You have, like, let me go to the next slide. Like, you have the sun, right? And like, just, you see there are these different themes that have to do with the sun. And honestly, I will say, since I did make this like a couple I made it and originally shared this a couple months ago, there's some words I would add now. But again, I wanted to try and keep this concise. But yeah, like, you have the sun, right? And look at these different themes that have to do with the sun, and this isn't even all of them. So, like, to a degree, some of these don't even seem like they should, make sense together. Or, you might be wondering, just kind of like, why do these things have to do with the sun and not possibly maybe other planets? So, let's kind of take a word from these themes and kind of put it in the center of that thought map. Let's go with identity. Let's use that as the key word for the sun. What is the sun? Identity. Personally, I like to think of the word spirit, especially, and we'll get to it, and this is part of it too, because obviously over time, as you learn more, things change, things switch up. But yeah, we're gonna go with identity for the sun. And what goes into identity? Identity is who you are, what kind of relates to your identity. Well, we know also the sun kind of has themes of the masculine and masculinity. That ties into identity. We just created another branch, another offshoot. Well, what else has to do with identity? Ideology. Ideology relates to identity. It's one of those things that are, because it's so tied to identity, that's part of the reason why it is very difficult to get people to change their ideology, because it's tied to identity. Identity is tied to intellect. How people identify and how they feel about themselves is tied to their relationship to, or their understanding of their own intellect. Also, how other people view their intellect. What is also part of identity? How you present, how other people identify you. Especially in astrology, things don't just go one way. Things go both ways. Especially with the sun, things kind of go all ways. Because, what is the sun? It's light. The sun is a luminary. It's not actually a planet. And there's more that goes into the sun itself, but we're keeping things simple. We're not going to get into that, but the sun is a luminary. So, this sun has, the sun's rays kind of shine on everything. The sun is very visible. I mean, you could even have that as the offshoot, visible. What's visible in you, for you. That can be another offshoot. Like I said earlier, now I think I would have put spirit up there. Kind of like what is like, yeah, like what is you, like your core. But I guess, again, that does tie back into identity. Your core identity, your core self. Who you are within kind of the flesh. And we'll get to that in the next slide, talking about the flesh. But like who, you are within the flesh, that thing that's controlling your body. That's you. And how do we make further sense of this? We can understand these things about the sun. We know these themes. But at the same time, it is a bit like there's a lot to it. So how do we kind of further make sense of this, and also like keep kind of straight with these themes and not go too out of bounds? Then kind of talk about the planets, because again, they have a lot of meaning. So at times things can start to get murky, trying to simplify things and keep things straight, but also not limiting yourself. And that's why it is kind of handy to look at how the signs relate to the planets. Feel like it is a bit important to point out that, the astrology started with reading the planets, or like interpreting the planets, track across the sky. The zodiac was added later. And even then, over the years, even the signs considered part of the zodiac have changed. Some signs have been involved in kind of the zodiac wheel longer than others. Also, quite literally, some stars, some even aspects of the planets have existed longer than others. I don't know if y'all have seen that post on like Tumblr that this person's just kind of freaking out about sharks, because sharks have existed longer than some things in space, like the rings around Saturn, the North Star. Those are all younger than sharks. So also keep that in mind when talking about and learning about astrology. There are just certain things that just didn't quite exist yet. I mean, even again, we're not going to get into the later planets, because those just weren't yet, easily visible. You couldn't see them with the naked eye. I think maybe Uranus you could, like, if the conditions were really right. If like once in a blue moon, maybe you could see Uranus with the naked eye. But I think, once you get to Neptune, we needed very powerful telescopes. Or, more powerful than what they had. We needed telescopes. And obviously Pluto. Pluto, they're arguing if it's even a planet. But yeah. So there's a lot. There's a lot to consider. So, helping to keep things straight and stay on theme, if you will. You that is kind of why we're looking at the essential dignitaries, because they are kind of good blue point for, that, stepping outside of that kind of nebulous region where there's just so much things can mean, and stepping into that part where it's like, well, this is what things are. Because, if the planets do really well here, what does that say about the planet? And also, if this sign is where this planet does well, what does that say about this sign? That kind of helps keep us on track, helps keep things in order, and also will later help us play around a bit more with these placements, with these combinations of planet and sign. Because, we know where things do well, so that'll help let us know what it looks like then when the order's kind of rearranged a bit more. We just talked about the sun. So now looking at themes of Aries, we know that the sun is exalted in Aries. That means that's where the sun kind of does best. It's where it does its best work. What are, themes of Aries? And again, we could do create that map again. Let's choose the word action. Let's choose the word action for Aries. That's going to be kind of our central keyword. Our central word for Aries. Aries is a sign about action. People act when they're confident. You do kind of have to act with, you do have to, kind of act with, I'm trying to think the word. Keep thinking of precision, but that's not quite the right word I'm looking for. But you do need to act with surety. There we go. The best way to execute things is to be extremely sure in your action, right? Extremely sure of yourself. You acting to really carry through on something, which is action, to do a thing, to act, you have to follow through. That's Aries. Optimism, that kind of goes with action. You have to have that belief. You have to believe in what you're doing to act. Power. I mean, literally, how do things happen? Through the power of something. Bravery. Sometimes to act, you have to be brave. And then it makes sense why the sun does well in Aries, because you take identity, you take the self, and what do people do? They act. That is kind of the nature of life and living. to kind of experience life in the best way, you do have to be willing and able to act on things. You can't just kind of not do anything. You will move or be moved. Life is going to happen. You have to be able to carry through on what you want. To even get what you want, you have to do things. Even going back to spirit, and I forgot to mention earlier, but I'll mention now. I do plan to make more post on kind of the planets and the signs, because again, like it's helpful to have a lot of different forms of things and various ways of relaying information, even if it is kind of the same information. So I do plan to do kind of post on the planets and the signs, like individual ones. Currently working on the one for the sun, and just kind of going through the dignitaries of the sun and kind of really getting more into it, really talking about it, kind of sharing examples, just really expanding on the ideal further. Really like pretty much kind of showing, or like, yeah, kind of like talking through the process in a longer form of what we're doing here today. That will be available as as I finish up each post and put it out. That'll be available in my coffee shop with subscription, because it's gonna be much a lot longer and more intensive effort than just making a PowerPoint and talking about it. And again, also it's kind of like complementary, because again, we have this video, we're going through it together right now, and you have the power, or you could download the PowerPoint for free in PDF and kind of like go over it on your own time, at your own pace, kind of use it like a worksheet, going over the examples. So yeah, that's just something to look out for the future. But the reason why, I'm good. I was gonna bring it up anyways, but it reminded me working on that. Again, like I said, now keyword I use for the sun is spirit. The sun has to do with intellect, but also, the sun is a very spiritual sign, or not sign, but it's a very spiritual planet. It does have to, in a way, do with, like spirituality, religion, that sort of thing. But, again, we're kind of tying these themes together to make sense of kind of why things are the way they are astrologically. If the sun is a spiritual planet, what does it mean for Aries to be where the sun does its best work? That also means Aries too is a very spiritual sign. I don't really see people talk about this, and that's what I mean, how sometimes people kind of focus on these key words, or they focus on certain things, but because they're not really kind of getting into why and how things work the way they do, and again, maybe it's just me and how I like to kind of go, I like to kind of follow thoughts all the way through. But yeah, people don't necessarily talk about Aries spiritual aspects. It's a very spiritual sign. You could think of, the sun in Aries is kind of like a almost, it's this innate need on a, like, deep personal to the point where it is spiritual level to be someone that acts and does and leads and is passionate. Like, you can't rein things in. You it's I mean, how people talk about Aries suns. You can't act them to just not do. They have the thought they're doing it. It's just who they are and how they are. Um, Belief systems. That's under ideology. Like, that's Aries. And that's something to keep in mind when thinking about the sun and Aries. So let's keep going. I forgot that's what I named this slide. Or that's the heading on this slide. But yeah, let's keep going. We see the moon, and we're not gonna get into every planet. Honestly, that's why this keeps getting long, because I keep wanting to talk about every planet, but I have to keep reminding myself that is what my next posts are going to be, where we are, or where I am getting into each, kind of using this system to get into each planet and, like, really show it in action. But also, not everyone needs that. Not everyone needs or wants that kind of extra, like, please just lay it all out for me. But for the folks that do, that's what those future posts are gonna be for. Um, but yeah, kind of download the PDF if you want. Um, Here again is kind of the planet, well, in this case the luminary, its dignitaries, kind of start thinking about it like we did with the sun. um or specifically the example of the sun and Aries together, kind of following through on those themes and kind of why it is the sun probably does really well in Aries. Now we're looking at the moon. Now it's at home in Cancer, it's in detriment in Capricorn, it's exalted in Taurus, it's in fallen Scorpio. Also, seeing that pattern of signs that are kind of across from each other on the zodiac axis. If a planet does well in one sign, that means the sign that's across from that isn't really where it does that great. Also, further thinking on that, if knowing kind of what the planets symbolize, what planets and signs, or I guess what signs symbolize and what planets and signs symbolize. Again, if the planets are kind of like these things, or representing like these things, this energy, um kind of something being experienced, if you will, and the signs are like in what ways this is showing up, or like how this is being expressed. One thing I found kind of interesting looking at this is, like, obviously, yes, planets, in fall or detriment aren't exhibiting their energy in the best ways, or are not being expressed in ways that you could say the planet, as it's often put, the planet planets aren't expressed in ways they're comfortable or in ways they're doing their best work. They're quite uncomfortable in these signs. They're doing their worst work here. But also, again, thinking of reading a chart, and again, keeping in mind like houses and aspects and all that good stuff. Sometimes what we can see is also kind of what it means when, none of these signs are involved at all. Because just because, a planet can be in fall doesn't necessarily mean that you could say for a person maybe with these placements or experiencing these transits, it necessarily to them feels the worst. Or for them is like like the worst things could be, because you also remember kind of when looking at the axis along the zodiac, planets or like sister signs, these signs that are kind of opposite each other on the zodiac wheel. If planets are there, or if there are things placed there, it often creates an aspect, the opposition aspect. They're 180 degrees away from each other. It's a straight line. But oppositions often mean there's like a tension there. And that is kind of why the system is the way it is, this essential dignitary system. Why doesn't the moon do great in Scorpio? Because it's opposite Taurus. And also what we know is kind of the meaning of, you could say these oppositional signs. They're like two different sides of the same coin. So similar themes, different perspectives, different sides and different angles of these themes, from different viewpoints of these themes. And kind of obviously different experiences of these themes. So yeah, it's not great for planets to be in, these opposite signs and where they want to be or enjoy being. But then also it makes you think, what does it mean when maybe these planets are in the sign next to these signs? Like, what does it mean for the moon to be in like Leo? Because we know those signs, they have nothing to do with each other. Signs that are next to each other, because they don't make an aspect. I think they're just called like incongruent. So, since they're next to each other, their themes, because you can also kind of think of the zodiac wheel as like building upon the previous theme. So, like Aries is the self. Taurus, I feel like is fair to say, seeing, remember earlier we talked about the sun is kind of like the internal, the inside aspect of you, but now we're at the moon. I mentioned the flesh, inside the flesh, that's kind of the sun's domain. That aspect of people, the moon rules the flesh, the moon rules the body. So, if the moon is the moon is exalted in Taurus, and Taurus we know comes after Aries, what does that say? That's also kind of something to keep in mind, and why we kind of look at the planets and signs in this way, because that too adds to the story and helps, make things make more sense. So, the moon is exalted in Taurus. Aries is about, kind of self-focused. it's a go-getter. Well, Taurus is the opposite of that. Taurus is fixed. It's a fixed sign. It's earth. It's feminine. Um, it's Venus ruled, which we'll get to. Um, you know, Aries is about the self, the person, personhood, action. But remembering the zodiac signs build upon the themes, you could say because Aries is acting, Taurus is obtaining. Taurus is I feel like it might be fair to say creating in some way. That might be a word you can use. um Taurus is building upon things. Again, Taurus is Venus ruled. It makes sense why the moon is exalted, and it's a very earthly, fleshy sign. It literally also has to do with the senses. Taurus is honestly that reminder that you are in a body. Aries can get a little bit woo woo. Honestly, Aries can get a little bit woo woo, a little bit so focused on getting out there and doing things, it forgets the body can only do so much. The body can only handle so much. It's great to have ideals, but to execute them, you gotta take care of yourself. That's where Taurus steps in. So it also does make sense, the moon having to do with the body, having to do with motherhood, culture, the home. Taurus being this earthy, sensory focused, I'm trying to think of a better word than object. Like honestly relating to like stuff. All those things that have to do with the sensory. Because think of the senses. There are 5 of them. Touch, taste, smell, sight. All the things that can be experienced in that way. Taurus definitely relates to that. And all those things also have to do with those lunar themes. Your culture dictates your clothes. Your culture dictates the things you value, which also is something that Venus relates to, which rules Taurus and is at home in Taurus. So, kind of those things, Taurus, or, those things that are dictated by the moon directly relate to what Taurus has to do with is involved with. Taurus has to, kind of do with fertility and growth and growing things. I feel like I'm trying to think if there's possibly like a better word for that or a better way to say that, but also does make sense. Because, as we continue to look into the planets and signs, we then start to see kind of the overlap of things. And we then start to see why, it is a good idea to try and keep these things straight, because eventually themes are going to start coming back up again. Things are going to start being able to, things are going to start relating to each other. And it is very easy to then start kind of mixing things up and misattributing things and just getting overwhelmed and confused. Because, eventually, I'll keep going, but eventually you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, I guess keep in mind Taurus and growth. But we have to remember, in that sensory, earthy, fleshly way, like literally growing things, which again makes sense. The moon is exalted here because, like, there is various aspects to growth, various reasons why we use the word grow. But in this case, we're talking about literal growth, like the literal act of growing a plant, of growing a child, of rearing something, taking care of something, raising pets. I want to say Venus has to do with pets as well. So like raising animals, you're literally helping something grow. That's Taurus. And why it makes sense the moon is exalted there. And keep an eye on Cancer. She's gonna come up again later. But also makes sense why the moon is at home in Cancer. But not necessarily where it's exalted. And let's keep going. We have the sun, home in Leo, detriment in Aquarius, exalted in Aries, and fall in Libra. We already kind of got into the sun and its exaltation. I also haven't necessarily meant to just kind of talk about the exaltation aspect of these planets and signs. It's just fun to talk about though, so I will say I do believe in my post I did talk about how sometimes because of what we do know about the themes of the planets and signs, and what I did just mention recently, that it is easy to over focus on certain things and certain aspects, and to kind of even also ignore other things because we're focusing so heavily on like one understanding or interpretation, or like one keyword that kind of missing out on all the other keywords and how they all kind of they're not just there, they don't just kind of exist. It's not like we're throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks and the keywords are just like spaghetti on the wall. They all relate back to each other. I mean, I in that example slide, all of those words, we could make it go back together. And that's something I've definitely noticed when it comes to people talking about the sun. And I'll be honest, again, like I don't want to rag on folk, and I don't really like when folks get ragged on. Things, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I've seen some people, again, they get very offended by how people talk about astrology now, especially, because there's the whole pop astrology thing. But I mean, there's a pop version of everything. There's pop psychology, which is literally, actually, let me not say that, but like, it's not great. There's pop sciences, there's pop everything for all the academic fields. Astrology is not special. That's just kind of what people do. People take a little bit of information and they run with it. You have scammers everywhere and people that think they're cleverer than they really are. So I feel like people really get their panties in a twist over nothing. Actually, that's not fair. People's feelings matter, but like, me personally, I'm not losing sleep over it. So yeah. And also I get it, because misinformation is not great, period. But also, it's gonna happen. So maybe let's try and just focus on getting good information out there, and also not dogging people. Because again, Is astrology that accessible to get into? I'm gonna be honest, no. Easy doesn't mean accessible. Because what's easy for one person isn't necessarily easy for other people. Accessibility is about quality, not necessarily quantity. Honestly, and that's just that. Moving on. One thing I've noticed is, again, just when it comes to the sun, and honestly, there's so many different reasons for this. Um, that again, astrology is tied to culture, and because of the way our culture is, how we talk about the sun and how that kind of leaks into talking about the sun astrologically. Um, eh, it's it's a bit tricky. Excuse me, shall I say? Or it's a bit difficult. I feel like it's kind of obvious, but also not obvious. I feel like it's especially with the sun, people kind of are like, you should know what it means, and this is what it means, and it just is, and it's like that was a whole lot of nothing. That was a whole lot of nothing. What do you mean by that? And especially when it comes to the signs and the relationship to the sun. I mean, just in general, the whole pop astrology thing hinges on sun sign or not impersonation, but sun sign information, right? Uh, there's a lot of stereotyping, and um honestly, it is where a lot of the kind of sentiment around kind of finding those uh keywords and just really honing in on them, but not quite really going deeper into it, or really trying to actually make sense of what it even means for those things to be a keyword and why they are. Um, so I've definitely noticed, especially when it comes to these signs, the information is not, necessarily the best. I feel like they are a bit tricky to read and understand, because the way people talk about them is like, eh. And I feel like it's a bit confusing at first, until, you do think of, well, they are in some way or form tied very closely to the sun, to the understanding of the sun, and vice versa. Our understanding of the sun really determines and helps us figure out these signs. Um, and I mentioned in my post, I kind of talked about how people often do this thing where, they kind of like uh pair the planets up and be like, oh, these planets, um kind of, they do kind of the oppositional thing with the planets. And and it's saying that is kind of like, because it's the signs that are oppositional, not the planets. The planets just go. The planets are just moving around the sky. What gives them the added extra meaning is when they are in certain signs. Um, I mean, obviously, yes, to a degree, the planets have their own themes, and in a way, their themes do counter each other. Or else, what would be the point of giving each planet different themes? But like I kind of hinted at just now, we do reach a point where themes are similar, where themes start to repeat in different ways. And sometimes it's not like those planets and you know the signs these planets do well in, the signs aren't oppositional. The signs don't necessarily show in that way. that the themes are like counter to each other, or the themes are, very closely tied. You got to put a little bit more uh work in to figure out. It's not necessarily immediately noticeable. Um, in kind of looking at the signs and looking at the planets. Also looking at the planets and signs, seeing where they do well, you also kind of get this picture of there's like something more going on here. Like, what are we missing? And that's why, we're doing this. And it's important to, look at these themes and really think about what is it these themes are saying. What is the story here? What is actually being said? And I talked about the moon exalted in Taurus. Let's talk about, um, where the sun is in fall. Let's talk about Libra. Um, the sun is exalted in Aries. Um, we've talked about that, but so what does it mean for the sun to be in fall in Libra? What is Libra about? Why Libra? Why not maybe some other signs? Um, the Libra is Venus ruled. Venus is at home in Libra. That I feel like that also, you might want to keep that in mind when thinking about also kind of the planets' relationships to each other and how that kind of works. Because, you might think, this the sun, it's not like it's not considered a malefic, the greater or lesser than, but also perhaps the sun, despite being kind of in a way a positive planet, or at least positively viewed, perhaps the sun has some malefic qualities. That's something to consider and something to keep in mind, when uh thinking about and talking about the sun astrologically, and how that might look and appear in a chart. you know Again, Aries is ruled by Mars, so what does that also say for Mars in the sun? Yeah, Libra's Venus ruled, but Libra is also where another planet is exalted. Libra is where Saturn is exalted. So that's another interesting thing. When a planet is in fall, that's again like the worst its energy is being expressed. The worst those themes are kind of uh being presented in life, So, it, you might think, and I feel like it's often presented, kind of obviously, the sun and the moon, um, the signs that are, that kind of do well in those planets, you switch them around and it's like, what's going on here? I'm not really feeling this. It's what is happening? This is strange. This is confusing. Nothing is quite going the way you think it should or would. Kind of obviously. So you might think like, oh, the planets then, they really, they just really must not have, they must be quite oppositional. But no, that's not how things are set up. Um, you know, it's Libra that the sun is in fallen. It's not Cancer. It's not even Taurus. Even though Taurus is another Venus ruled sign. Um, I mean, but again, those something to keep in mind. Those signs are also um Cancer comes before Leo, and Taurus comes after Aries. So they're right next to each other. So, obviously there's something there too, but it's not quite to the degree or in the way that it is with you know, Libra and Aquarius. Aquarius too. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Um I think I think Aquarius has something to do with Uranus. I'm trying to remember if it's where it's exalted as well or if it's just ruled also by Uranus, but that's neither here nor there. But the two Saturn heavy signs, right? Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Libra is where Saturn is exalted. That's a lot of, Saturnian themes going on here. We can then kind of gather the Sun and Saturn really just don't see eye to eye thematically. Their themes are quite different. Now, different, like I said earlier, different sides of the same coin. Their themes are truly kind of different views of the same thing, different parts of kind of the same experience, you could say. Or different experiences of the same thing. There we go, that's better. Different experiences of the same thing. Again, we already talked about, Sun, strongly relates to identity. So also interestingly, why would the Sun not do well in Libra? Libra is kind of a social sign. Libra, and you might see this is where things can get a bit confusing as well. Like, Libra has to do with connecting. It's Venus ruled. Libra has to do with kind of that social aspect of connecting. I mean, Libra and Leo don't necessarily not get along. If Leo is a fire sign, Libra is an air sign. Oftentimes what happens if you have placements in a fire and air signs that kind of come one after the other, they sextile. And a sextile is, a pretty nice aspect. It means there's some, ease happening there between those placements. So Libra and Leo can sometimes, if you have that in a chart, it means there's sometimes a sextile there. And that makes sense. What people say about Leo, how Leo, it's a kingly sign. Kind of similar to Aries, has to do with the self, leadership. It's where the Sun is at home, so that means the Sun is comfortable there. So the Sun is really kind of shining, pun not intended, but I don't know how else to put it. The Sun truly shines in Leo. Leo is also a very self directed sign. Leo has to do with goodness. Honestly, I feel like people talk so much about Leo that when it comes time for me to talk about Leo, I'm like, y'all already know. I mean, Leo is fixed. It's a fire sign as well. It's masculine as well. Interestingly, if you've noticed with the Sun and the Moon, the signs that are kind of most prominent when talking about them are all feminine or all masculine. The Sun and Moon rule, men, woman, straightforward, fatherhood, motherhood. Leo is a very loyal sign. I said kingly, And honestly, that I feel like that's a fair king word. I know it's overplayed, but like, how else do you describe a sign that symbol is the lion? In many cultures, lions represent royalty. It's a very uh regal sign. What is regality? What is royalty? Also, again, Leo also has that spiritual aspect. In a different way, in two different degrees than Aries. And in fairness, you could say every sign has spiritual aspects, but absolutely, or can relate to spiritual. But that's neither here nor there. Actually, maybe I wouldn't say that for every sign, but either way, Leo also in a way has that like spirit, like innate sense to the point where it's like spiritual uh need for like self-management and being the self. I think true, like if Aries is doing, that's kind of what it represents, why the sun does really well there, because there the sun gets to be and do. Leo is just being. Leo is just existing. That's kind of how royalty works, right? Royals just are. You're born into royalty. Aries is kind of royals that are made. To reach to that point of having a dynasty, you do have to fight for it first. You have to prove to everyone else you are meant to be in charge. That's Aries, and why the sun is exalted there. But Leo is, you've already done the fighting, honestly. And again, we mentioned that kind of the way the zodiac works is the themes build on each other. Aries started it off. Aries kicked off the dynasty. We mentioned Taurus is kind of building, making, creating physically. Taurus built the castle. Getting all the way to Leo, or even then, actually let's not skip Gemini and Cancer. Let's keep this metaphor going. But, Taurus built the castle. Gemini is maintaining that kingdom through trade. Gemini is the jester. Gemini is the court. Honestly, Gemini is the court of that royal. Because again, we're not. Yeah, the royal was made. They built their castle. They formed their court. And then we get to Cancer. How do you maintain your royalty? How do you continue the royal line? Pretty straightforward. You gotta create the family. Also, how do you maintain that royal line? You have to kind of give reasons for why you're meant to be in charge and stay in charge. You gotta kind of, what is your court doing? Or why did you create this court? Why do you kind of have those people on your side, those people around you? You got your Cancer, like, yes, it is directly your family, but remember, it's also culture. There's a culture built around this royal family now. The royal family represents the culture. They're representing the whole people. Cancer is the country. Honestly, Cancer is the country. And now we get into Leo. We've kind of, at the beginnings of the end of the cycle. Beginnings of the end of the cycle. And that is why you could see the sun doesn't do well in these Saturnian themed signs. Because, we get to Leo. Leo is the prince. Leo is that king. They could kind of sit and rest in their laurels. They have their kids. Now they're just watching them grow. Fatherhood. But, skipping ahead, we're not going to get into the rest of the signs. I mean, they're going to come up with other planets anyways. But, skipping ahead, you know, again, because those signs that are opposite each other, it's a dichotomy. It's, um, kind of very clearly in this Sun Saturn dichotomy, the beginning and the end. I mean, Sun rules life, has to do with life. So what happens when life is over? It dies. And you very much see that in that Leo Aquarius dichotomy, continuing with the example of the royal and royalty. How does royalty end? And it's gonna be interesting getting back to Libra with this. But how does royalty end? With Aquarius, royalty is sometimes deposed. Royalty is rebelled against. That's what Aquarius has to do with. And also why I think, people sometimes get too caught up in certain keywords without thinking about how they relate to each other. Because Saturn, yes, it rules death. I feel like that'll come up later, when kind of talking about Jupiter and Saturn. And again, I'm trying to keep this short, so I'll really get into it for my post. But get it. Saturn rules death. It has to do with time. But I feel like, or I shouldn't say that, but but it also has to do with boundaries. And I feel like that is actually the word that is the key word for Saturn, is boundaries. And what are boundaries? It literally rules boundaries. So being within and out of bounds. Well, who's more on the in, than Leo, then the king, then, the it girl, the it boy, then the celebrity, then the trend setter, or like the reason why there are trends. That's Leo. But remembering, the dichotomy between the signs, they are kind of mirror images of each other. Aquarius is also a trendsetter. Aquarius is also a leader in a way. But Aquarius is, rebellious. The reign of the dynasty ends often because people have rebelled against the dynasty. People have, decided they had enough. They don't want kings and queens anymore. They don't want royalty. And Aquarius comes in and knocks the castle down. It gets through the walls. So also interesting because, Aquarius is the second to last sign before Aries comes up again. Excuse me. So in a way, and you also have to remember that the reason why the signs are kind of placed they are the way they are, because, astrology is partially an environmental study, or like it relates to the environment. That's where we're seeing the patterns, or where we're relating the patterns that are happening to the sky. We're relating them to our experiences on Earth. So it's also interesting to think of Aries, or I guess kind of to see how yes, the cycle begins and ends Aries and Pisces. Aries is the first sign, Pisces is the last. But kind of thematically, the true end of the cycle is like Aries and Libra. Because what's another way royalty is ended? When things become equal. When people are equal, there are no royals because everyone is the same. And that's Libra. Libra is balance. Libra, it's interesting because Libra is not a mutable sign, but it does have to do with duality. And also, um, you know, and further interesting that the sun doesn't do well there, because the sun is very singularly focused. You know, we've kind of established that through Leo and Aries. And even, you know, it not doing great in Aquarius. Aquarius is another air sign. Um, you know, Aquarius and Libra, they kind of also show Saturn is about dualities. These are, you know, Libra within itself, it kind of encompasses the almost full duality of Saturn. That might be a bit much to say, but I also feel like it might be a bit fair, you know, really showcasing just how far Saturn can go with its contradictions. Because Libra also is a bit of a contradictory sign. And do you necessarily want a leader that is constantly contradicting themselves? You know, do you as a person, you know, it is, you know, the sun is the spirit, you know, the self, the thing within the flesh. Um, and for that to always kind of be an inner turmoil, because there is so many things to consider, so many possibilities, so many options, so many things to uh take in. And you know, using that word take in, you know, remembering Libra is ruled by Venus. So even though it is cardinal in air and masculine, there's still also that like fleshy aspect of it, that kind of bodily felt, that sensatory aspect. um though Libra is kind of more that aspect of like literally dealing with people. You know, Taurus was kind of like the stuff on earth. Libra is kind of dealing with the people on earth, the beings on earth, you know, socializing. I mean, how do you get stuff? You know, you gotta buy it. You gotta sometimes trade for it. Um, you know, it again, it's a earth sign, so it's quite social. That is kind of how the earth signs work. They have that social aspect. You know, Aquarius being, you know, on that Leo, you know, with being across from Leo, they kind of deal with that like ideological social aspect. But like Aries and Libra being across from Aries, they kind of Libra kind of deals with that um uh I guess you could say like social actions, like acting in a social space, being in a social space. Honestly, social spaces. Venus also has to do with like rituals, religion in a way. Uh, it is also a kind of doing planet. You know, Taurus is growing things, Libra, and again, Venus is like connecting. So, you know, Libra is kind of like connecting socially, you know, in a way, you know, similar to Aries, kind of within us, you know, has to do with that kind of space of, uh, you know, it is a little more, um, what's the word? I'm trying to think the word, because I don't want to say like ephemeral. I mean, also, I guess I could say, you know, in a way, also ideological. Not, I wouldn't necessarily say to the degree of Leo and Aquarius, or like it's not emphasized like that. But again, when the signs are kind of on an axis, they kind of, again, they marry each other. So in a way, Aquarius and Libra are also related to the spirit. You know, they're also spiritual signs. So Libra is kind of the spirit. Yes, all that to say, Libra is like the spirit of fellowship and what it means to be in a society. I would say community, but not quite. Because, you know, community is a part of society, but low-key, I feel like that's kind of relates more to Cancer and perhaps some of the other signs and planets that will come up later, but not necessarily like a Venus, Sun, Saturn thing, you know, or Mars. You know, not necessarily their prerogative, but it is kind of the spirit of interacting, you know, the spirit of you know, uniting. And Aries is the spirit of, you know, I guess division, the spirit of self. The Libra is the spirit of self among others. Maybe I should just say community, but like in a Libra way. And then, you know, Leo also, you know, kind of that spirit of you know, self. And Aquarius, again, that spirit of like, or no, like Leo is like the spirit of like self-realization, and Aquarius is kind of like that spirit of would it be actualization, like kind of like you, Aquarius knows this self but is like turning that outwards. Aquarius is like seeing society as a whole. Yeah, let's continue because I'm really not trying to have this be long. In fairness though, my original stream was I think it was either almost 4 hours or about 4 hours. So again, also this is what my post will be for. So and again, you could download these and kind of, you know, we've given enough examples. You could kind of, you know, follow along if you want to. You know, you could look at this. It's a nice reference to be like, okay, now let's get into it. You know, you could get your little notebook, write your thoughts out. You know, that's what this is for. And that's what I'm doing now. You know, just kind of showing y'all what this process looks like and how it looks like when I do it. So yeah, we have Mercury. Like I said, doing this process really helped me figure out Mercury. I mean, you know, I have a lot of Jupiter in my chart. Jupiter's my chart ruler. Yeah, I kind of struggled, especially with the way people talk about Mercury. Now, I will say, but I kind of got into the first time I recorded, and then I had to record again. But, you know, I will like to remind people, like, honestly, Mercury is a very interesting planet. And, you know, like I have been kind of saying, there's a way people talk about the signs, and I understand why. You know, they're trying to... I mean, one, people can only explain things the way they understand it from their point of view, which, I mean, hey, that's what I'm doing right now. But if that's not you, and you can't relate or understand that, it's not going to work out for you. And also, you know, culture and history plays a big part. Like, Mercury and the moon used to be considered a lot more similar and have a lot more overlap in like ancient times and in more historical times than they do now. But I feel like to some degrees, I mean, just in general, to some degrees, knowledge is never really like lost and the essence of it still exists. And I feel like trying to learn about the Mercury signs and the planet, you know, there are some elements of that where I was just like, I'm just not getting it. I'm not quite understanding what people are saying. because, you know, people really kind of similar to the sun. People have a certain perspective, and that is cultural. You know, just the way our culture is, you know, we very much value mercurial things. But what does that mean? You know, what do people mean when they do talk about mercurial things and Mercury? You know, Mercury also has to do with like intellect and intelligence, you know, mentioned earlier, learning. But like, in what ways? And, you know, there are just certain things that are kind of, you know, and I'll even say like in a way I feel like there's certain ways or certain attributes given to Mercury, certain value that is given to Mercury, especially certain Mercury ruled signs over others. It's just, and you know, kind of like I was saying earlier, I'm not necessarily for getting rid of the gendered language in astrology, because I feel like it'll serve well to remind people kind of what we're working with and where folks are coming from. You know, like you can't just kind of stop saying a thing and hope everyone forgets what you meant when you say certain things, or like what you said in the first place, like, you know. And that could just be my Cancer rising. I'm never going to forget. I will always remember, like, I remember what you said and why you said it. And just changing the language isn't going to change the fact that the meaning is still there. And what really needs to change is your mind and your point of view and your ideology. And I did say changing ideology is hard. Again, it's part of the sense of self. But people's sense of self can and does change all the time. So, like, you need to fix yourself. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. But, you know, I would like to point out, you know, one thing that really helps me figure out Mercury and make better sense of it is, you know, looking at that where Mercury is exalted and in fall. And also the fact that it's, you know, where it's at home in detriment. You know, interestingly, Mercury is the only planet, you know, out of the first 7. I don't know about the new ones, but, you know, out of the first 7, it's the only planet that is at home and exalted in one sign. You know, it's not also exalted in Gemini, just Virgo. And that says something. You know, that's very significant. And also Sagittarius and Gemini are the only signs that are only at home, or, you know, only ruled by a planet. You know, they have planets that are at home in them, but there's nothing else. You know, these signs are just kind of, I feel like, in a way out of the other signs, which is again quite interesting. Because, you know, Sag is ruled by Jupiter, so it's ruled by a greater benefic. But what does it mean for other planets to be in Sagittarius? Considering, you know, they have all these other signs they do much better, or, you know, at least, I mean, also much worse, but, or, you know, they just don't really work the best in. But then they get to Sag and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, there are other signs these planets would rather be in. It's really just Jupiter that, you know, wants to be there. And even then, Jupiter doesn't want to, like, you know, Jupiter will live there, but Jupiter doesn't want to work there, you know? Jupiter doesn't do its best work there. Jupiter's just comfortable there. And, you know, when you're in comfort, you're not necessarily doing your hardest work, you know? And, you know, same with Gemini. Now, Mercury is not a benefic or a malefic. And also, unlike kind of the moon and sun, It doesn't have any like kind of benefic or malefic vibes going on there. Like, the sun could be a bit malefic, the moon could be a bit benefic. Um, but Mercury is just Mercury. It's pretty neutral. It's a very neutral planet. So, for it to be okay in Gemini, Gemini is a pretty neutral sign. It's pretty neutral, Mercury does well there. It's comfortable there. But, the other planets get into Gemini and it's like, what's going on here? I don't know. Again, obviously you think of the signs next to them. So obviously the planets that rule those and do well there, probably to some degree, they probably don't want to be in there. But again, it's just kind of like they're just there. But yeah, it's interesting to think about how we talk about Mercury and define Mercury themes. And I feel like there is an emphasis on Gemini, and I've seen many people say, why isn't Mercury exalted in Gemini? And I feel like you really need to sometimes keep in mind, like, yes, there is cultural influence, and I do believe that, just in general, astrology today isn't what it used to be, and it has had to change with the times. Culture is what gives meaning to astrology. But at the same time, it's because of this, it's also important to keep in mind that astrology is telling us about a culture. So when talking about Mercury, I think it's important to ask yourself, what kind of culture do we want to have? Do we want to move to a culture that values Gemini and says Gemini is where Mercury is at home over Virgo? Or is that the qualities we're seeking out? And like I said, I'll get more into it in my individual post. Trying to keep this video short, but that's something to consider. And also, again, doing this exercise, thoughts that come up and things, again, it helps make clearer. It gives more emphasis to kind of how these things are kind of pieced together, making sense of things and why it is. And how we'll be able to understand later, when we have these less clear-cut placements. So let's move to the next one. Venus, exalted in Pisces and fallen Virgo, at home in Taurus and Libra, in detriment in Scorpio and Aries. We've kind of talked about Taurus, Libra, Scorpio, Aries. Didn't really talk about Scorpio and Aries relationship to Venus. But again, if, they're Martian signs, very much doing, go-getters, very much about the doing the work, or, not even just action, because in a way, Taurus and Libra also are about doing work. It's just in a more communal, social way, in a way that physically shows up in the world, right? And these Martian signs, they're personal. They're you doing work. They're your kind of like thoughts, your efforts, just the point you have to get to, or the point you get to do something. If that makes sense. But yeah, Venus is exalted in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, so Jupiter is at home. Jupiter is expansion. I'm sure you've noticed by now, a lot of times planets and the planets they're at home in, or do well in, you could, for the most part, use the words for similar. Pisces also in a way deals with expansion. I would say honestly for Pisces, the key word I would use is maybe assimilation. I say ethereal a lot. I feel like people say that a lot, but that's a bit vague. Honestly, I would just say like misty, like mist. I know that's not necessarily like the usual type of describing word. But that is what it is, and even within that yeah, Pisces is vague. Pisces is hard to pin down. It's a mutable water feminine sign. You know, what mutable water? What does that look like? The ocean. Pisces is very spacey. I don't think I've seen this said, but I do. I feel like Pisces kind of rules space, or like has to do with space. Like literally space. Like outer space. Hey, I got a Pisces moon. That's kind of where the whole, or not where the whole, but like, I think, because of my Pisces moon, my kind of personality, that is kind of where the whole Walian thing stems from. Wells in space, the concept of space as an ocean. I feel like that is very Piscean. you know, Pisces is vast. Being where Venus is exalted, you think about Venus is about connecting. I think that's the key word we used for Venus earlier. Venus is connecting. What else is the ultimate connection than Pisces? Being, like I said, mist. Mist exists kind of within, or like when you're inside mist, it envelops you, but it also can be like inside of you, because it's water vapor. You absorb the water. That's why you don't want to be near toxic gas, because it will be very bad. Pisces is kind of gas like. Being in a cloud. When you're in a cloud, you can't touch it. It's kind of all around you. It's touching you, yet not touching you. It's kind of the ultimate connection. Pisces is also very spiritual sign. Jupiter also is a very spiritual planet. And remember I mentioned earlier, Venus has to do with what's the word? Venus has to do with ritual, religion in a way. Um, how do you even get to that point? You know, what is religion without the spirituality that leads to it? And you might, I can also see why some people might not quite think then that Pisces should be, where Venus does its best. Because I don't think normally Pisces is associated with like organized things. But again, it's not necessarily about where planets are comfortable, it's about where they do their best work. And, it's the planets that are kind of like doing things. The signs, again, are just kind of representations of like what the thing is, the area the thing is happening. So, like, Pisces is just kind of representing um the actions of Venus. And if Venus is about ritual, Pisces is kind of like why we're doing the ritual. You know, like I said, what is religion without the spirituality that's tied to it? And then also interesting that if Venus is exalted in Pisces, it's in fall in Virgo. Virgo being that kind of ultimate mercurial sign. Mercury is very detail oriented, it's direct, it's about what is calculable. Virgo is an earth sign. It is very much about like statistics. What is quantifiable? And Pisces is about things that can't be quantified. Your feelings can't be quantified. Sensing things is not quantifiable. Again, spirituality, religion is not quantifiable. You know, you can't prove that things you can't see are real. Um, but again, also there's that dichotomy. So like Virgo, can create a microscope to see things that we previously didn't think were real, and we kind of, I mean, hey, this is astrology. Isn't that what happened with astrology? People had to, people kind of created astrology and were using astrology to explain things that later on new studies and new sciences led to other ways of understanding the things that people previously understood through astrology. Um, kind of shifting and changing the nature of astrology, right? And why it's used. So yeah, let's continue. We got Mars, um, at home in Aries and Scorpio, detriment in Libra and Taurus, exalted in Capricorn, and in fall in Cancer. Very interesting. Um, I really wish I could get into it. I honestly I love. I mean, hey, if you haven't already read my Jason Todd and Capricorn post, you should. I'm a Capricorn lover, hands down. I'ma love me a Capricorn till I die. I mean, hey, that is kind of obvious when talking about Capricorn. Um, that is kind of the realm of Capricorn, but like, I mean, I literally have a Capricorn Venus. I literally love Capricorn. And that Capricorn Cancer dichotomy, also, how we were talking about earlier, you know, Saturn versus Sun, not Saturn, the Moon versus Sun seems pretty obvious. Also, Jupiter versus Saturn seems pretty straightforward. I mean, again, the Sun kind of deals with like life and living and like creating things, and Saturn has to do with the opposite of that, so it kind of makes sense, you know. Um, but Jupiter also kind of has to do with like life and living, growing things, in a bit of a different way than the Moon, But it has to do with those things too. So again, um, thinking of, well, if Saturn and the Sun are really, you know, kind of against each other, then it's probably fair to say that Saturn and Jupiter really don't see eye to eye. But I would like to suggest perhaps there's more to Jupiter and Mars really not seeing eye to eye. And I'm gonna be honest. This wasn't like, again, as I've been doing this, I've kind of been, rethinking the signs and planets and how people talk about them. Cause I told y'all, I got all that Jupiter in my chart. So of course that means my Mars is in a Jupiter sign. So I hurt my own feelings. Coming across this realization, cause I was hoping maybe, cause my Mars is Sag, and I'm like, well, Sag is fire. That should be hopeful, right? It's masculine. It trines Aries. It shouldn't be too bad. But what did we also, discover while doing this? How Libra and Leo kind of sextile. So sometimes there are kind of like positive things between not so great like potential placements. I feel like I could have worded that a bit better, but yeah, like you could have a Leo, a Leo sun and like a Mars Libra, or like a maybe I got them mixed up. Oh no, let's see. I feel like, oh, okay, you could have a Saturn Leo, yeah, a Saturn Leo and Libra Sun. um they're sextile, but it's maybe without the sextile it would be worse to have those placements. um like not the best, but maybe, hopefully, probably not the worst, because they're helping each other out a little bit. I don't know, but yeah, Mars Sag, there's that trine with Aries. So they helping each other out, but like, is it the best placement to have? Who I don't think so. I'm looking at this and I'm like, possibly not. Possibly not. And again, it makes sense. Pisces very much being a sign about connection. So clearly there's kind of that vibe with Jupiter, right? Jupiter in a way also has to do with connection. And Jupiter's exalted in Cancer. So there really seems to be something here about Mars and Jupiter. And to a degree, yes, Saturn. Saturn rules Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. But I think, again, it does also remind us to think about, well, then what does Saturn really mean? Saturn is kind of about contradictions. And Mars, we kind of already established Mars is not contradictory. Mars is very straightforward. Mars it gives no room for what's the word? Mars doesn't really give leeway. That's why those Mars signs don't really do well in those planets that are a little more forgiving, that are a little more kind of loosey-goosey. Excuse me, I mean, also think of the speed of which planets go through. the signs, that also kind of has to do with their themes and traits. The moon goes through signs very fast. Very fast. And I do believe, when you have planets in the placements, the ruler of that planet also kind of are influencing over the planet in that sign as well. So, you're trying to be Mars. Mars is trying to do what it does. And the moon is just speed running the Zodiac every month. You're just kind of, it's too much in flux for Mars. So let's keep it going. Jupiter. We just talked about Jupiter and its signs. There's definitely something about Jupiter and Mercury and Saturn and the moon. Now I think I did mention earlier, talking about that growth in Cancer. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Cancer has that kind of literal aspect of like motherhood, but I feel like seeing Jupiter exalted in Cancer kind of emphasizes Cancer in a way, also has very it's the luminary. In a way, it is also ideological. Nations, they have borders sometimes they don't. What is a nation? Who is a people? People exist all over. Jupiter has to do with travel. And you remember earlier I was talking about Saturn and how people, depending on their history and culture, have different relationship to Saturn. I was talking about, I ain't scared of Saturn. And now, in fairness, I do have a lot of Jupiter in my chart. That could be why I'm kind of like, Saturn don't scare me. But I know I'm probably not the only Black woman who has been like, Saturn don't scare me. Because especially since other people I've seen, they have a lot of Saturn and Mars in their chart. They have a lot of malefics. I'm sure there is something to look into that culturally. Black people in astrology and the malefics. But also in a way the benefics. I feel like there's also something to be said about Libra in our culture, and ruled by Venus, where Saturn is exalted. I don't know, there's something to look to there. Also, I've noticed certain trends around Scorpio. Certain things around Scorpio. At home, where Mars is at home, the moon doesn't necessarily do great there. Me personally, I've mentioned Cancer and Sag a lot. Jupiter rules my chart because of how much Sag I have. And Pisces too. Like, because everything for me in my chart kind of goes back to Jupiter. And my Jupiter is in a Jupiter ruled sign. So, there's definitely something to be said there about, Jupiter's relationship to people, but in that kind of theoretical way. Yes, ideology, but not quite even that. Because it's a bit more ephemeral. It's not necessarily like the sun. It's not necessarily like Saturn or Mars or Venus. It's very much kind of the theory of things. It's exploration. It's exploring things. It's not necessarily pinned down. Which makes sense why it does really well in Cancer. Because, Cancer does have a bit of structure. But it is exploratory. It is expansive. what is a family if not adding more people to you, like to your unit, creating a unit. Your family is like a piece of you, a part of you. Kind of that theme that the luminaries have, or I guess I should say the luminary rule signs have, of identity, but Cancer is that other aspect of identity. um think I mentioned, nations. Nationalism relates to Cancer, and by way, Jupiter. We talked about Leo and the ruler. uh a lot of rulers kind of exist to maintain their rules through nationalism, leading to revolts. And, like Aquarius has to do with, rebelling. In a way, Capricorn also can show the end of things. Just in a different way. I feel like it's fair to say a Capricorn being, earth and cardinal and feminine, unlike, honestly, like the opposite of Aquarius, which is a very interesting thing. They're next to each other. They really have nothing to do with each other, which I think kind of further hammers the point of Saturn being a planet of contradiction and about contradictions. Kind of like ruling contradiction, like that theme. How do you depose a leader? What, if kings, we could say, are gotten rid of through rebellion, how do you depose a queen? Honestly, very straightforward. Actually, this is actually a very straightforward example. Queens are often imprisoned and murdered. That's how you get rid of a queen. How do you, what do, it's often said that mothers kind of rule the culture of a home. So if you want to change the culture or something, what do? You switch out the mothers, or you could just get rid of them. Historically, that's that's kind of what happens. And even in saying that, the reverse is true, because that's another thing with astrology. If one thing is true, the reverse is true. Queens, they, that Jupiter and Capricorn, you could say, kind of also shows that, in the history of queens making kings, literally and also figuratively, because you look at, kind of how court politics have been played historically, especially when there have been like multiple queens. Also, I feel like Jupiter and Capricorn, the dangers of having multiple queens, because of, this issue I'm going to bring up, how when you have multiple women who are giving heirs to the king, and now they fight, they have to fight over which of their children is going to be able to become king. And they also, when they, to have your child to become king, the original king has to die. There can't be anyone left. So, I feel like Jupiter and Capricorn, kind of straightforwardly, again, you could depose by pushing people out like Aquarius, or you could depose by keeping people in or putting them 6 feet underground. Yeah, very interesting. Like I said, I mean, I already said, I don't get Mercury, or I didn't quite get Mercury like that, but Jupiter, I get it. That's, that's my girl. Yeah, last planet, Saturn. At home in Capricorn, Aquarius, in detriment in Cancer and Leo, exalted in Libra, and fallen Aries. I feel like we've talked about the other planets and signs at length. Um, you can figure it out. If not, hey, just wait for me to finish my post and get to Saturn, and it will be available. Um, if you subscribe to my $5 tier, I think. But also I will probably continue to do more lives and to make more videos, and these subjects will all come up because I really enjoy talking about this. It's just so interesting. It's so fun. And honestly, like, do I want to learn more about astrology? Yes, but I could literally just continue to explore the relationship between the planets and the signs, because there's always more to say, and there's always so many examples to use and so many things to point out. I mean, like, again, like Capricorn and Jupiter, just talk about Jupiter's relationship with Cancer, why that dichotomy is, what that dichotomy looks like. And like, that's not even a thing I thought of, the relationship, of Cancer, if Leo is the king, Cancer is the queen. Well, what does that look like? Especially from that lens of the relationship of Jupiter, and how Jupiter must also, have some associations to like royalty. Or at least that queenly nature, which also another thing is interesting, because I see when people talk about like marriage, especially with women, they say like look to your Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter also has to kind of do with themes of marriage. So they'll tell women like look to your Jupiter sign of, figure out what, kind of how your future husband is gonna be like. But I personally think it might actually be better to say, you know, people do say like, oh, the woman of the house, the wife of the house is the queen of the house. Maybe it's not your, might be a different way of putting it is, look to the Jupiter to find out in what way you're going to be made queen of your house. I don't know. That could be, I don't know. Maybe that's not a thing. Maybe that's not a thing. I could have just made that up. But, that's why we're doing this. It's all learning. We're learning together. But yeah, here's Saturn. We've talked quite a bit at length of these signs already. Next slide. Let's practice. Honestly, this is mainly for y'all at home. For y'all watching this, here are some examples to kind of look at. We've gone into kind of the dignitaries of the planets, where they do well. And now that we've kind of really explored their themes, how they relate to each other, what that kind of means for the signs, now we're doing the kind of hard part, or the harder part, honestly. Learning anything new is always a bit difficult. But, now we're doing the other part, because, for the most part, we're doing this because we want to be able to read charts. And most people don't have planets in home signs, or exalted planets, or in fall, or in detriment. Most people have placements like Taurus sun, Pisces moon, Gemini Jupiter. No, Scorpio. I mean, yes, Gemini Jupiter, but like a Scorpio Mercury. I feel like I keep getting those. Actually, maybe that is the right order. But yeah, you're gonna come across a lot of signs, in planet placements that are a little less straightforward, but kind of knowing why planets do well in certain signs, and really getting into those themes, and like, okay, um really expanding on those themes, it's much easier then to start kind of taking those concepts and like mixing them up. So yeah, here's an example interpretation. Pisces, a Pisces moon. Um, you know, Pisces is expansion. It's creative. It's receptive. The moon's about like travel. It's feminine. It's about feelings. So, the moon in Pisces, it might be a creative individual. Possibly someone that moves around a lot. Again, that expansion. Um, kind of following that line of thought of expanding on, these words and how they kind of relate to each other, and how further we can get into the topics. uh you know the moon's known for travel. Pisces is a pretty fluid sign. um Possibly someone that's on the move a lot, someone possibly that is very uh I put just inspired by their environment, but like probably someone that feels deeply, right? Pisces has a depth to it. Moon relating to that like inner world as well, kind of that self in a way, a bit similar to the sun, that like a spiritual aspect. Pisces moon could be a deeply possibly even a deeply spiritual person, because they are so receptive. Also possibly someone that is what's the word, possibly someone that's a bit gullible. Because they are so open, and because the moon is so changing and always shifting, might be someone who changes their opinions a lot. Might be someone that might be quick to believe, but also um quick to believe in something else, quick to change their mind. Perhaps not necessarily someone that really holds on to things. And I feel like when talking about this aspect of astrology, using astrology to understand people, it's not fair to use certain language. Like, I feel like a lot of people would say like, oh, Pisces moon fickle. But I mean, one, that's not a fair assertion, because it's making a lot of assumptions on why that person is behaving the way they do, what that person believes in, because you don't know until you actually talk to someone, right? So part of this exercise is honestly to kind of, stay your lane a little bit. Like, to not be presumptuous. Because again, we're kind of mainly looking at this from the angle of reading a birth chart, or like trying to understand other people. You don't know what's going on in someone's head until you talk to them, until they tell you, until they let you in. Now, it might be correct to guess there is potential that if you are dealing with the Pisces moon, they will let you in. They might wear their heart on their sleeve. But I mean, that's when we also have to start getting into like aspects and other placements, but like, trying to be respectful. Because again, there's so many words we can use. We want to be careful about what words we use and how we use them and why we use them. And again, there's there's no morality to astrological placements. I feel like, kind of going back to that, people talking about how people talk about astrology, and there is this element I've seen of even people that are like practice astrologers and are, really um experienced in the field. There is kind of this thing people often do, kind of ironically, because, again, people complain about pop astrology, but pop astrology is the way it is because people are, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to get views. They're trying to get likes. They're trying to, it exists because of marketing, right? And people know, to get views, to share information, you have to be attractive in some way. Oh, that's another thing. Pisces moon could be like an attractive person, or, kind of more specifically, kind of combining those Piscean and moon themes. They might be someone that like dresses attractively, or they have a very attractive home. They might decorate things very attractively. They might not necessarily like physically be attractive. Because that sort of thing is dependent on the person. It's how other people view them. Because, if someone has like a Virgo moon, or, no, I'll say if someone has like a Virgo Venus, they might find a Pisces moon hideous. Because, Venus rules attraction, and Virgo is opposite Pisces. So the Pisces moon, that Pisces themed body, that Virgo themed attraction, they see a Pisces looking body and they're like, yeah, that's kind of, it's not my cup of tea. So yeah, but yeah, you want to be careful of trying to imply too much. And I feel like that was also another issue I was having, why I started reframing and re-looking at how I try to understand things, because I don't know how else to put it. People just, they assume a lot through astrology, and I'm like, astrology is not built on like assumptions. I mean, you can be a bit presumptuous with astrology, but like, astrology is built on patterns. And I'll be honest, a lot of people aren't that good at reading patterns. Low key, that's why some people get into astrology, to actually learn how to read a pattern. And also, that's why some people don't like astrology, because they're just not very good at it. So yeah, let's keep going. Here's another example. I'll be quiet. I'll wait a bit. Um, you know, I'll let y'all read this. I mean, it's Libra Venus, kind of straightforward. But it is also fun and in good practice too. Like, even though to like, still be able to do the math, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, we know 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's kind of given at this point. But like, you had to eventually learn why 2 plus 2 equals 4, and it's in good practice to remember why exactly 2 plus 2 equals 4. You don't want to, because sometimes you do get mixed up. Sometimes you do forget, or you take things for granted. You never want to take your information for granted. So yeah, I'll be quiet for a little bit. I'll let you read this, kind of do your own Okay, next slide. And that's the end. Practice makes perfect. Luckily, because there are 7 planets and 12 signs, there's a lot of combinations. And like I said, I made this you know, I mean, obviously with my own level of knowledge, but kind of thinking of mainly people with my level of knowledge. So like, you know, throw some aspects up in there, throw some, houses, because again, this is trying to make sense of placements to be able to read a chart. Because again, that's what I was struggling with. Like I have the information, I just don't know how to put it together. That was my struggle. So now we've kind of put the pieces together. We've put the information together. Um, I hope that was helpful. It was helpful for me. Um, yeah, I'm a bit sorry. It is a bit long. I mean, but do I really have to apologize though? I mean, I already stressed my Jupiterian nature. So obviously that also means my Mercury. My Mercury is also in a Jupiter sign. So I put in quite an effort to not have this be super long. Um Luckily with YouTube, you can go through this as fast or as slow as you want or need to. Um, but yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope, if you're learning astrology, I hope this was helpful. Um, Even if you already know like everything there is to know about astrology, I hope this is, entertaining or maybe like a nice refresher for you. Um, I will say this is interesting, honestly, for me, going back through this and watching this video, because even when I originally streamed this, I had already like continued learning more things, and there were some things I was like, oh, I would change this or I would change that. But I just didn't have the time to before I streamed it. Um, and even now, like I said in the beginning when going through the planets, I'm like, I kind of, there's other words I would put up there. There's other things I would emphasize now. And it'll definitely be interesting once I start doing the post on kind of the planets and the signs individually, of like the sun, the signs it goes into, or the sun, its dignitaries, kind of really expanding on that, and how looking at those, how we could further understand the planets and signs there, and then you know inevitably mixing them all up, and kind of understanding how they all kind of relate to each other, in various ways, um and kind of these varied relationships. I mean, I think I did mention how you start to see this, like there's a little more to the story than what is often found available, online or for free, or the most accessible, in the most accessible ways. um and again, like for some people that works and they don't have to do all this extra stuff to make sense of things. But for me, things just weren't working. I needed things more laid out. I needed a better way of looking at the big detail. Having all those little details was just too much. Um, so yeah. Uh, I guess now, I'll just kind of, give the spill. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe. Um, if you didn't enjoy it, I don't want to know. Honestly, I'll be honest. If I want feedback, I will ask for it, and I feel like I should actually say that, because I know a lot of astrologers. Y'all are very mercurial people. Mercurial people, they do often, they don't mind a bit of a constructive criticism, as they put it. I'm not that person. If I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. We did just, kind of establish Jupiter as a, it also is a bit of a sign to do with royalty. Um, in a way, I do have my heirs like that. If I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Um, I don't have a court or a court jester currently, so when that position is open, I'll start making the invitations about that. But as it stands right now, that's just not where I'm at. Let me stop playing. But yeah, if you enjoy this, like, subscribe. Um, there'll be more videos next year, possibly, maybe, probably. Um, at the time of this video being out, I'm winding down, so you'll best if you want to like see me doing other things and like talk and like chit chat and all that, or watch more things kind of similar to this, or like me just kind of like talking about things or like going over things. um I'll still be streaming. I have a co-working stream coming up, um which might probably possibly also serve as my continuation of going over playlists I recently shared. Now, I made a little Jason Todd fan mix. And I was just going over on stream like my song choices and just talking about the character and just really, just kind of diving into things and analyzing the character and the songs. Time got of course, inevitably, time got away from me. So we kind of cut it short. So I already plan to have a co-working stream up. So that will probably be what comes up next. And I'll just like combine the two because, again, I have to work. I really was hoping I would have already kind of finished some of those posts that are supposed to go with this, talking about the planets and signs. One for one, kind of a longer, more in-depth version of those, of the points we were talking about, the planets and during those slides. Really getting into it in a written way, because honestly, excuse me, writing long form is really my best way to communicate and my best form of communication. Honestly, I do this and like talk to people because that's how most people prefer to communicate. But like, if I could bring back email and letters, I would. And I am trying it. So far not quite successful, but in blogging, I never stopped blogging. A lot of people stop, not me. I'm gonna be a blogger till I die. I even keep a journal. I love me a good long form writing. That's, to me, the best way to communicate. I love a good essay. Not really a video essay girl. I love a good written essay. Well, neither here nor there. I was hoping I would have already at least gotten one out by now. It's just, again, time's gotten away from me. Not even necessarily my fault. I mean, I'm human. I mentioned I'm disabled, so I can't. I just can't. And again, especially this time of year, I've already mentioned, kind of other times, during my streams, I try to get into AMP, but AMP is like dying. So, over there and other places on the internet, this month before this video came out, I've kind of, mentioned that, once the sun stops being out at 5, it is time for me to retire. It is time for me to hibernate. It is time for me to sleep. So, it's resting season for me. But yeah, because of this, because it is resting season, um I'm not getting a lot of work done. So it might take a bit of time to get those, kind of extra posts out for this. They will be done eventually. Just will a lot of them be done by the end of this year? Possibly, probably not. But they will be done. And again, they'll be available through my subscription anyway. So like, if you want to support and help me be able to continue doing this, and if you like what I'm doing, um, you know, a little support goes a long way. If you want to like subscribe now, and as the posts come out, you'll be able to like immediately get them, or because I get not everyone got it like that. It's rough times we're living in. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have a subscription option. Cause it wouldn't be that much of an issue, but and not that much of an issue, but I wouldn't necessarily have the need to ask. If I already had it, I wouldn't ask for it. But I don't. So if you also don't got it like that, you can't wait for the post to be out. There will be 7, because again, I'm not quite my understanding of all 9 planets isn't quite there yet. And again, I also don't quite know how the rulerships of those planets work, and honestly, it's a headache always trying to figure it out. So I'm not even bothering. But for those 7 planets, the 7 traditional rulerships of the signs, when all 7 of those posts are done, you'll be able to like subscribe for that month, download them all, and unsubscribe. I get it. And I want to say I also have my coffee set up, so if you have like donated before to my coffee, or like tipped to my coffee before, and it equals that amount of what a subscription costs, I'm pretty sure it should already be like you're a supporter, and you'll be able to download things. If it's not how it works, I feel like that's a thing I can do. That's the thing I could set up. And also just in general, just ask. If you see this, or you see like if you see this, you've already supported in the past, and you want to download these, just ask. If you've already met the level, like paid into that tier technically before, I'll just send it to you, or like make it. There should probably be a way I could like make it available to download, but like, yeah, I'll just send it to you. Cause yeah, again, I get it. Not everyone has it like that. I'm not I'm not trying to gatekeep here, especially since part of the issue of trying to learn astrology is just having access to things. It's very it's very academic, shall we say, with academia prices. And again, I get it. People need to eat. But also, no, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to keep it cute. But yeah, people need to eat. So I get it. But also, some people are currently struggling to eat. So I want to make sure that, a lot of the good stuff is available. And again, since those posts will be kind of like extra stuff, and again, they're like, it'll be a lot of work for me to do. Um, because again, it'll basically just be like a long written format of us just now talking about those the planets and the signs in those slides. Um, it'll basically be that, but written out with some more specific examples. Just really getting into it. Um, and again, that'll be work, and again, that's more for folk that are like, I don't I don't want to currently just think that hard about it. I do kind of want to just like lay it out. And I get that too, because I'm also like that sometimes. I'm like, I just don't want to think. Just tell me, just give it to me straight. So if you need someone to just like, if you need that, just give it to me straight. Paper. That's what that is. But again, like that's also what this is for. Why I made the slides. Kind of showing, and also the post, why I made that blog post, just kind of trying to show in as straightforward and simple way as I can what I'm kind of talking about here, what it kind of means to use, or, look at the dignitaries of the planets and kind of use that to further better understand the planets and signs and their themes, and then also kind of better understand what it means when they're not in those positions, because again, most people don't have that. Like it is it is interesting that a lot of times when people have planets that are exalted, people mention that they hate the seeing that in a chart, or like when people have those placements, it irritates a lot of people, or people be like, oh, I hate like Pisces Venuses, or like I hate Aries suns, even like Leo suns, Scorpio Mars. I've seen a lot of people say they love Scorpio moons, they love Scorpio Venus. I mean, in a way, also, again, remembering how culture determines our interpretation of things. And again, that's neither good nor bad. It is just honestly honest. It is true. And it's a fair observation to make. Individuals are individuals. And also, again, people's own charts play into how they even can understand astrology. So, like, neither here nor there. But, yeah, when people have those, like, positive, placements, a lot of times in actual reality, in actual, like, play, if you will, people are like, I'm not feeling it. So, I feel like that could also show that people don't normally interact with those placements either. It makes them uncomfortable because it's not something they see a lot. Usually people see I guess you could say, like, casual placements. The placements that are just like, like I said with Gemini and Sagittarius, neither here nor there. They just kind of are like going through life vibing. They're a bit neutral. Maybe Gemini more so than Sag. But yeah, kind of neutral. So yeah, I'll wrapping things up. Before we hit that 4-hour mark. Yeah, links to things in the description. You could kind of find everything through my Ko-fi. My Ko-fi is linked to on like all my social media. If you are interested in seeing what else I do and what else I get up to. Because, like I said, I just love to learn. I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I love culture. I love history. That's why I'm into astrology. It's very interesting to me. Um, you know, it's almost like cosmic storytelling, if you will. It's very just this is fun. It's very fun. Um, I I'll be streaming. Um, I this is going. I don't know when this will go up actually, but when it is up, it'll probably be up sometime October of the year 2023. So, as the time I've posted this, I'll say, if this doesn't go up before the 23rd of October, um, or no, if this doesn't go up after the 23rd of October, hopefully it does, but it should go up before the 23rd of October, and that's where I'm going to go live on Twitch again. I think sometime in the evening. I'll have to check. Yeah, it'll be in the evening at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I might change the time. I might actually go earlier. Cause again, it'll be a co-working stream. So I might actually go for like the afternoon time. We'll see. But yeah, we'll have that. And then next month, because that'll kind of end the month. Next month I'm going to have a birthday stream, a karaoke birthday stream. That'll happen when it happens. Keep a lookout, at my social media for updates on that. We've mostly figured out everything we need for that. But it's the timing. I won't really know. I have the day. It is gonna just be on my birthday, but the timing, we'll see. It'll probably start when it starts. If you want to just come by and do some karaoke, have a little party. Keep a lookout for that. But yeah, that'll basically close out the year. Might do a Christmas caroling karaoke stream December. Probably will do it like that middle of the week before Christmas. If it happens at all. It might not. Depends on, that'll really just be for fun. So if I'm not doing other things, it'll happen or it doesn't. But yeah, as already mentioned, links to everything in my link tree. That's where all my other social media is. It'll be linked in the description box. I feel like I should point out I do have a Discord. I'm trying to move everyone towards that. I mean, obviously, subscribing to like my channel, following me on my other social media. That's also a good bet for, one, just seeing what I'm working on and what I'm sharing. Because, I don't share everything to this YouTube, obviously. Like, if you want to see what I've written or see my art or just, various things, you're going to have to go to those other social media sites. But if you want, like, updates, then you really want to check out my coffee and join my Discord. I'm trying to kind of move everyone, especially for like when I go live and stuff. I'm trying to move people towards that because I mean, one, Twitch doesn't always update. It doesn't always let people know when you go live. And sometimes just in general, the Twitch app is a little bit finicky. I personally have a, I have a lot of trouble with the Twitch app, so, um, it's not quite reliable, but especially when I'm like going live with things, because again, like this is kind of re-recording of what was originally done live, and it would have been just like a recording of my live if it had worked properly. But there'll be future uh streams like this one. There'll be times, I mean, even like most recently my Jason Todd stream. I made that Capricorn and Jason Todd post on my blog. Then I made like a fan mix um for the character, kind of in a way further expanding on these kind of themes in this view of this character. And then, we did and we're going to do a stream about further going over this character. So, that's just kind of what I do here. So if you want to see these things in like real time and be able to like, talk in real time and, have questions and like chat together and, not necessarily have the limitations of like a comment section, or like DMs, which honestly, no guarantees I'll even be able to get to. I'll be able to get to DMs because I don't really be on apps like that, which is again part of the reason why I made the Discord, because it's everything's in one place. Everything's in one place. I even kind of have different sections of the Discord for depending on like why you follow me and what you follow me for. Cause on Twitch I'm Thug Batman, and that's kind of like when I'm doing like game stuff. Like I think on Tumblr I have like Thug Batman Gaming, where I just kind of talk about games, and that's kind of like, when I do my like kind of geeky game related things, nerd related things, that is kind of Thug Batman's area. And this is more of the Waylian side. That's like, my Instagram, my threads, because that's attached to Instagram, my blog, that's more the Raelian sphere. So this sort of thing, the astrology, the kind of, talking about various things, more cultural related or culture related, more art related, and related more to my creative projects. Depending on what side of the fence you've met me on. There's even room for that in the Discord, which also you don't necessarily have just following me on the various social media, or if you're just following my Twitch. You might miss out on like what stream is happening, so you think you're joining one thing and it's another, because I also have my schedules. I've also been putting my scheduling on in my Discord. I also put on my Instagram. Instagram is a pretty good place to follow me, but I'm also not that active. Like it's short form of communication is really my thing. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not someone that really enjoys being that overly active on social media. It's a lot. It's a lot to try and do and keep up with, and I don't like fighting with algorithms. So yeah, if you want kind of those more immediate up to date updates, Coffee and Discord. Again, it's with Discord particularly when I'm like going live. And if you want to like continue the conversation, so to say, Like if after you've watched this and you're like, ooh, I want to talk more about this, go to the Discord. Watching the stream is over and you're like, okay, but can we expand on some of these ideals? Can we talk about this? Go to the Discord. So yeah, that's it. Yay. Wrapping this up under 4 hours. Honestly, a record. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you had fun. Hope this was educational for you. Hope this, helped you as much as it's helped me. Thank you for watching. Again, links to things in the description. I think the first time I recorded this, well, actually, technically, I've been saying the first time. It was actually technically the second time because I try to, yeah, yeah. One of the times I recorded this, I asked people to share their Mercury sign, because usually people ask about like, oh, the big. Well, is Mercury part of the big three? No, it's not. That's crazy. It should be. Why? Anyways, yeah, usually people ask like, oh, what's your rising or your sun or your moon? I want to know. Because I feel like it's relevant here. I feel like it's actually relevant here. What's your Mercury sign? Mine's is Sag, if you haven't already guessed. Mine's is Sag Mercury. What's yours? Share that in chat. Any questions, comments, not, oh my goodness, not chat. I'm my bad. This is YouTube. See, I'm so used to streaming. But yeah, share that in the comments. What's your Mercury sign? Any questions, concerns, actually not concerns. What did we just discuss? I don't have any positions open for a jester right now. But again, when it's open, I'll let y'all know. And I'm being so for real. When it's open, I'll let y'all know. When I want those concerns, when I want to hear them, I'll let y'all know. But as of right now, the concerns box is closed. But yeah, any comments, any questions, any things you just want to bring up and talk about, let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. What has your journey been like trying to learn about astrology? What are some resources you really enjoy and like? I feel like I should probably include people and like things I've read and like nice resources in the comments, not in the comments, but in the description box. But also I feel like there are like resources that exist out there already on like websites and stuff that other people have made that are like easily searchable. So I feel like it might be a bit redundant for me to do that. I might mention people I really enjoy like watching and listening to. I think that's what I'll do. I'll like maybe link like other YouTubers and mention people in their sites that I've enjoyed. I might do that instead of like, here's all the websites I go to. Here's all the books I've read. In fairness, not that many yet. But yeah, I'll end this here. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Or actually, don't get your hope up, but hope to share things with you soon. Let's try that. Yeah, hope to share things with you soon. Hopefully those posts are up. I've already started working on them. I just gotta finish them. So hopefully they're up soon and my body will cooperate with me and let me sit in front of a desk and type and it won't yell at me. But yeah, bye.